Hello, this is Lauren Wilde. Welcome back to this astrology transmission for the week of October the 7th through the 14th of 2024. So we are going to just kind of link right back into where we started at the beginning of September before eclipse season started this fall, and I had to move and reorient my life. And then but really have to push pretty hard to lean into this unfolding of this next version of my life and how quickly it's moving, whether I want it to or not. So thank you guys so much for your patience as we get back to our regularly scheduled programming, and that is our moon day updates for the astrology for the week and any other big major things that are coming down the pipe, within the next 30 to 60 days. So let's go ahead and get into it. Today we're recording on Monday, October the 7th. The moon is in early Sagittarius. It's in that first decan. So it's kind of starting to wake up. It's a fire sign. However, it's mutable. So it's more philosophical. It's more truth seeking. It tends to want to postulate versus make any major decisions, because it has more of that stoic philosopher kind of energy behind it usually. However, we've got an interesting week coming up astrologically that I'm kind of anxious to get into, especially around things that have to do with relationship dynamics. If you go back and you listen to the last podcast I did on flow and force, I talk a little bit about it because it was recorded on the day of the eclipse in Libra, but I'll just go ahead and touch on it for a moment to get into it. So last week on October the 2nd, we had a solar eclipse, an annular solar eclipse, so a ring of fire eclipse at 10 degrees of Libra. It was conjunct Black Moon Lilith and Mercury in a square to Mars in Cancer. So that particular aspect was bringing a sense of completion and closure to the eclipse that we had in Libra 6 months ago, as well as a year ago, as well as 10 years ago. So it was the last eclipse in Libra for the next 10 years. And let's talk about what that means. It brings up a lot around relationships, particularly around karmic relationships. Libra is the sign of the scales, the judge, the truth speaker, the diplomat. It really and truly wants to find a sense of balance and, what is harmonious. But when the scales get too far in one direction, you will always hear a Libra holler out, "That's not fair." Because you have to understand that the other core parts of Libra, its access point is Aries, which is the warrior. So it can absolutely go into warrior energy. And its square cardinal planets are Capricorn and Cancer. They are the cardinal placements of the zodiac. And so what that means is that they want to take action and they want to be met in reciprocity and balance. And when not, typically Libra can become withdrawn. It can be cold and sort of just step back and watch how things go to be able to make the right decision. However, one of the shadow traits of Libra is indecision. And one of the biggest shadow traits of Libra is codependency, the fear of being alone. And so what that eclipse brought up was really and truly a 6 month to a year period of time where we're really cleansing and clearing out relationship structures and archetypes that no longer fit where we're going. Depending on where you are, what your chart is, everyone's chart is different. You may be on a 6 month period of time of clearing some karma through a karmic relationship. You may also be really working on healing yourself, considering the North Node is still in Aries of the individual. But regardless, some sort of relationship gets brought into play that really facilitates some sense of growth, realignment, rebalancing that is important for your soul's journey. And, I work with many, many students, life coaching clients, etc. that are in divorces, that are closing up divorces, that are moving, that are in these major completion energies. And one of the other reasons for that right now is because not only did we have that eclipse, we have eclipses at least 4 times every year. So there's always some sort of major completion. It's just this area of life is largely around legal issues, marriage, balance, codependency, particularly relationships. All right, connection. What does that mean to us? Is getting like really questioned, revamped, cleared, reset. What are we going to hold on to that is old? What are we not going to hold on to? How are we going to rebalance our lives to be in more alignment towards how we want to be in partnership, how we want to be perceived, how we want to be treated, how we want to treat other people, etc. Right? And so there's that. But the other aspect of something that's happening that's very important this week is that Pluto is going to station direct for the last time in 250 years in Capricorn. Now, Pluto stations direct around this time every year, at least for like the last 20 years, because it's in this part of the ecliptic. But what that tends to bring up is, looking back to what was going on in May, which was also during the last eclipses. So I'll pick back up on that in just a moment. But what you may feel this week is this weird, like, internalization of energy being pulled directly in. And there is a reason for that. The astrological planets this week of Jupiter and Pluto are both stationing in a different direction. And we were going to spend a decent amount of time on that, because when planets shift stationary direct or stationary retrograde, it has an effect on us on the psychological and somatic level. And each planet's attunement is different, where it affects you in your body, where it affects you in your chart. That's very unique to each individual. That is where an astrologer comes in. Again, if you ever have any questions about your chart, please book a reading with me. You can always find my details below. But what I want to get into is the overall energetics of the week, and then kind of break it down day by day, give you guys some advice, maybe some practices to utilize, and then we'll close out. So let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, the moon is in Sagittarius today on Monday. And it's really important to understand that when the moon is in Sagittarius, it can bring up feelings of restlessness. It can bring up feelings of like, is this my truth? Am I trapped? What is the great adventure of life? What am I doing with my life? But that's really like the major thing on Monday. Now, if we go ahead and move into Tuesday, on October the 8th, Venus is going to trine Mars. So why this is a big deal is because Venus is in Scorpio right now. She really is in her detriment in Scorpio. We call it the swamp, the 7 of Cups. She's overwhelmed with indecision. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know what decisions to make. But when she's trine, which is harmonious, it's supportive to Mars, which is in Cancer, we're getting this kind of teamwork effort between Venus, which is the feminine, and Mars, which is the masculine. And I'm not talking about genitalia. I'm talking about the far spectrums of energy in astrology. And so that, energy really started about yesterday to the day before that. But it drives us towards like pleasure as well as ambition. Like, what are you willing to fight for? It is really powerful if you're willing to be brave, which is Mars, and take initiative. If not, it can really start to point a finger at areas of ourselves that are not initiated or have not grown, we don't have like a handle on them quite yet in regards to how to take action around them. Maybe we feel stuck, maybe we feel paralyzed. But this is like, very powerful if you can use it to improve your finances, your relationships. Wherever Cancer and Scorpio are in your chart is where you're getting a big push that allows you to help you focus on certain projects. And then just like 2 hours after that aspect, which is about 6 in the morning tomorrow, Mercury he's going to trine Jupiter. And so we've got Mercury in Libra right now, really driving us again towards communication and relationships, balance, give and take, what feels right, what does not feel right. Libra, like I said, is very finely attuned to like what feels balanced and what feels off. Almost to, its detriment, honestly. But it can also give decision fatigue and make it very difficult to make choices. So just be mindful of that. But Mercury trine Jupiter is helpful because Jupiter is going to station the following day on Wednesday. And so it's like this last touch, really and truly, to be able to say what you need to say, to clear the air, to communicate what you want, need, desire, to be it like really improves your instincts. And so that's two trines early tomorrow morning that are very harmonious and supportive. They tend to bring good news and optimism behind them, especially for communications. However, on Wednesday, October the 9th at 3 in the morning, we have Jupiter stationing retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini, and it's going to be there until February 4th of 2025. And this is, in my opinion, a aspect that I really tend to pay attention to for people. The reason for that is because of the way that when Jupiter stations retrograde, it creates this very specific feeling like the wind is being taken from your sails. Like it just is like this big push energy all of a sudden is like shoot, and it just like pulls it all back in. And the reason for that is because Jupiter retrograde is very much about spiritual introspection. It is because, Jupiter rules spiritual outlooks. It rules optimism, big thinking. And so when Jupiter stations retrograde, it really tends to affect, especially Jupiterian ruled people. Like I'm very Jupiter, I'm Sagittarius rising, so it definitely affects me. But people that have like major Jupiter aspects, especially people in their first house, their 10th house, that's like your career, who you are, how people see you, it really tends to affect those people by making you feel more introverted, introspective. You could go kind of hermit. And it requires you to look within. It requires you to not be so social, but to really start to pull inward and focus, especially in Gemini. Now, I have talked about this aspect since like early in the year when I did my class on Jupiter and Gemini. You can scroll back through my podcast to listen to that in depth. But, Jupiter is a 13-month aspect in each sign. It's in Gemini this year and about a quarter of next year as well in 2025. And when Jupiter is in Gemini, it is the archetype of anxiety of the mind. So like it really amplifies our thought process, our communication process. It makes us really like chatty and communicative. But when Jupiter stations retrograde in Gemini, it takes all that chattiness internal. And not Jupiter, but Gemini is the twin. So it creates this multidimensionality, and everybody has Gemini in their charts. And so it can create this very interesting dynamic. I'm personally not a huge fan of it in people that have very low self-awareness or are poor communicators, because it can come off as very passive aggressive and two-faced. And so with this aspect of Venus trine Mars, Mercury trine Jupiter, and then Jupiter stationing retrograde and Pluto stationing direct, it's like bringing up this kind of like intense truth about ourselves, particularly around how we relate, how we communicate, what do we want in equanimity and reciprocity and relationship, what are our fears, and all of that energy is meant to be drawn inwards, because on Wednesday we've also got the moon entering Capricorn, which is again important introspective, because it's driving us to focus on like, what are we trying to build? What are we actually ambitious about? What kind of dreams need plans? When the moon is in Capricorn, it gives us a more shrewd outlook. It makes us more practical. It creates more of a drive for ambition, but also it can really like force us to critique ourselves and to look at our deficiencies, where we feel like we fall short. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is like, sky daddy of the zodiac. He can be very, very hard, shrewd, condemning. I work with Saturn a lot, actually. Working with Saturn changed my life. He is my sky daddy. We have a love-hate relationship, not gonna lie. But leaning into Saturnian principles changed my life and made me who I am. Same with Jupiter. But why I share all of that is like this moon in Capricorn is going to not really create the softest emotional landing ground for the feelings that start to come up this week. We will feel feelings of unworthiness. We will feel feelings of inadequacy. We will question our worth, things like that. And it's not to get stuck there. But it could be difficult this week because of the aspects that start to come in after Wednesday morning, when Jupiter stations retrograde. So on Thursday, around noon Eastern Standard Time, Venus is going to quincunx Jupiter retrograde. It can cause this real weird energy. Quincunxes are 150 degrees. They are the failure to integrate. They just create a weird, awkward energy. They just don't work well, right? Like they just don't. And so Venus will be in Scorpio, which creates this kind of paranoia, obsessive quality. It's very driven towards like secrecy and intimacy, and it wants depth, but it's afraid to reveal itself at the same time. And then, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini can create a lot of anxiety and internal mental struggle. It can really create this kind of imbalance within, and you want to use your wise mind this week around being humble, giving people the benefit of the doubt, moving slowly in your decisions, and really being clear about, what you value, and what you're willing to let go of and what you're willing to fight for. Because, just a couple of hours after that, we have our first quarter moon at 17 degrees of Capricorn, and that's going to be opposite Mars. And it can bring up like just irritability, aggression, frustration. It's not super easy energy, especially with Mercury squaring the mix of it. It creates a T square. That release point is going to be in Aries, which is again like frustration, authenticity. And so, like things that like usually you could ignore, like little annoyances, you just don't have as much of a filter around it. My suggestion to you is movement, exercise, channeling it into things that you can actually control, and not relationship energy, but also it could be very powerful for you to be able to speak your truth, to be able to say, listen, I've come to the end of my line with the lack of reciprocity and effort in this relationship. I'm feeling a misalignment. I'm feeling the vibration being off. I wish you nothing but the best, but I need to take a step back to reevaluate what I'm looking for in partnership, what I'm doing to contribute to that, what I was hoping for, et cetera, et cetera. So we may see some of that, especially just, knowing that we're still in the 2-week eclipse portal post eclipse in Libra, which is about relationships. And so there can be, some falling off of relationships, some strengthening of relationships, but that will really come through hard conversations that have a bonding effect versus a breaking effect. All of these things, though, when we start getting, oppositions and squares and cardinal planets, require initiatory behavior. You're going to have to take action. You're going to have to take the lead. If you want something, you're going to have to go and get it. It is very masculine energy in that Mars penetrative dynamic. And so I just wanted to say that you can't control other people, though. They could be frustrated. They could be irritated. So just be mindful as to how you plan on dealing with that. Should it get thrown in your face? What are your non-negotiables? What are your negotiables, right? And then let's get into Friday. So Friday around 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 11th, the moon's going to move into Aquarius. It creates detachment. So it makes us more introspective. It makes us less human. It makes us kind of look at like how things are working on a more ingenuitive versus human expression. So it's like it allows us to be more of a witness to ourselves versus be in ourselves and our emotions, if that makes sense. So you are like, wow, I got really triggered by that situation. Huh. Isn't that interesting? I didn't realize that I had still so much growth in that shadow. Wow. I guess I need to take a deep breath and lean into recognizing that this part of my story is not over. I still need to heal this. And that's part of what that moon in Aquarius can bring up. However, Mercury in Libra is going to quincunx Uranus in those late degrees retrograde in Taurus, which are like, it creates anxiety. You know, Libra wants peace, it wants harmony. Taurus can be stubborn as absolute hell. Like it, I mean, I have just about written off all Tauruses. I've dated many Taurus, married many Taurus. It's not many Taurus too, but like it's too many in my opinion. They can be so endearing and enduring and resilient, but so stubborn, so fixed, so focused on what they want, that it can feel like you're talking to a wall. And so, you know, Mercury in Libra is like, let's talk about it. Like, let's meet in the middle. Let's compromise. And, you know, Uranus retrograde in late Taurus is like, I've made up my mind. I'm not moving. And, you know, oftentimes that Libra energy will have to be like, okay, well, then if we're not going to meet in the middle, then this is where we have met and good luck. You know, or Libra in its not amplified energy can become very codependent and be like, okay, then I will bend towards you and be your doormat if it means that I don't have to be alone. Again, shadow aspect of Libra. I say that as a native Libra with Mercury in Libra. So I just, you know, if any of you are in that place, I really encourage you to stop and be retrospective with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, which rules the mind, the thinking mind and communication. And then Pluto is going to station direct on Friday night at 8:31 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is going to bring to completion this very deep period of reflection that has been moving between 2 degrees of Aquarius and 29 degrees of Capricorn since May the 2nd. This is like such a huge, long range aspect that it's almost hard to explain, but it brings the completion truly, you know, by the new year when Pluto gets out of Capricorn and crosses back into 1 degrees of Aquarius, which would be a couple months. It is going to bring completion to a 16-year cycle of Pluto in Capricorn, and then Pluto will be in Aquarius solidly for the next 20 years, which is a whole new era. And it is a very important aspect. And so you want to look back on like what has been closing out the last 16 years. What story, what themes, what kind of struggles, what kind of, you know, commitments did you make that were probably more traditional that are now undergoing some pretty big evolution, which is Pluto. You really had to face some really deep, heavy things, you know, around that. And so that is hopefully going to help you to really look within and see, you know, your shadows, your demons, and allow them to be brought into the light, to transmute them and make them medicine, to make them your daemons, your allies, the things that you know are within you that you're capable of, but you have discipline around, or you have integrated into who you are as a person. Hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't, again, keep listening, consider joining one of my programs. We talk a lot about these things from, you know, the high level all the way down to the very minute personal level. Then on Saturday, the 12th, Mercury is going to quincunx Neptune. Again, it's just like how can we make our feelings the most nebulous and awkward and confusing and paranoid? But it's just like not great energy again, because anything that has to do with Neptune is confusion and the fog, delusion, not seeing things clearly. And then you add in a quincunx, which is the hardest aspect, which again is like failure to integrate, failure to understand, between a rock and a hard place. It can definitely make you feel insecure. It could definitely make you feel like, what was I thinking? And it's an important time to try not to be around a ton of large groups if that's possible. It can have some intense emotional watery energy, for sure. And then on Sunday, Mercury in Libra is going to square Pluto, which is now direct, and Mercury is then going to cross directly into Scorpio like 4 or 5 hours later. So that's a lot of plutonic energy, a lot of like something needs to be brought to completion, something needs to evolve, somebody needs to face their fears. Really looking as to where 0 degrees of Scorpio is going to show you where you're talking about that. And then Mercury square Pluto is like, it's a great time to unveil many secrets, to have, more intense conversations about the truth behind things, to be able to speak your truth. However, please avoid extremes, conspiracy theories, things like that. Show up with your data and your truth, show up with your personal truth. Try not to deflect or shame or blame. See if you can take a moment to look at what your part in the situation was and create space for the other person to be able to share in that experience with you, and allow it to become a conversation, that allows it to strengthen your relationship, or it could be the thing that breaks it. So we've got some pretty heavy energy coming through that in that way this week. Sunday is just a big day astrologically. Then the moon's going to move into Pisces, and it's going to immediately trine Scorpio, Mercury and Scorpio, because of them both being in those very early 0 degree water signs. And it's just going to bring up a lot of emotion. A lot of emotion. Could be very healing. Could also be, can bring up like weird paranoia. It can bring up a lot of emotions that make it hard to focus, hard to be direct, hard to be clear. And then Mars semi-sextiles Jupiter, and that's powerful because it allows us to kind of like start to initiate some tasks that require our clear minds. It can make things feel more harmonious. And then the sun is going to trine Jupiter retrograde on around like noon on Sunday as well. And the sun's going to be in Libra, and it's going to be trine Jupiter retrograde at, I think, 20 or 21 degrees of Gemini. And this is like relationship. This is communication. This is a beneficial aspect. Anytime we have a trine, it's harmonious. It's air and air, communication, getting on the same page. There could be an aspect of legalities that's involved here, though, because of Jupiter and the sun in Libra, which are both the 2 zodiac signs that rule the legal system. So some sort of judicial situation. Could also be around education, new friends, new ways of raising, your consciousness, or seeking the truth. But I hope that those aspects are helpful for you. Let's go ahead and just kind of like bundle it up with my thoughts around, your focuses this week. So you're going to feel like this energy drawing you in all week long if you haven't already. That is Jupiter stationing retrograde and Pluto stationing direct. It's big, it's intense, it's very psychological. We've got a lot of planetary communication this week, and the big players are the air signs and the water signs. And when you get air and water, you get a hurricane. And so it's like a lot of water, and it's a lot of debris and things like that. And so you really want to think about this week a bit like an internal emotional storm. And I'm trying to remember how the saying goes, but it's something like smooth seas do not make a skilled sailor. And that's kind of my mantra I'm moving into this week. And that is like, really pay attention to the relationships that feel important. Do not fall in love with the idea of what it could be. Focus on what it is. And with what you have right here and right now, is it worth pursuing? Is it worth what it could be? But do not try to project your hopes and dreams of potential on your job, on your friend, on your romantic interest. That is a form of projection and deflection. And really pay attention to, the compatibility, the alignment, the challenges. Do they feel doable? Do they feel not doable? Can you talk about it? Can you not? Things like that. Before you get too headlong in a difficult relationship or into a business project with a collaborator, etc. Like I said, it's a lot of like heavy emotion meets critical analytical mind that is being very drawn inwards. So, Jupiter and Gemini is like, let's just talk about this. But when Jupiter stations retrograde in Gemini, it's like, oh my God, did they like me? Oh my God, did I get this completely wrong? Oh my God. And then someone's like, are you okay? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Gemini, right? Duality. Everything's fine. What are you talking about? Everything's fine. So what this Pluto retrograde is really going to ask us to do is to take off the mask and be very clear and be very transparent, to face your fears and to speak your truth and be authentic and to allow the scales of truth to rebalance. Because what you have to understand is, while all of this is going on, we're still in that 2-week portal between that Libra solar eclipse and the full moon in Aries that's coming up next week, which closes out this eclipse portal. So the things that are happening this week and next are important. And last week, especially too, because it's like bringing up these karmic relational lessons. Did you learn your lesson? What did you learn? And can you apply it? And can you be brave? Or will you fall back into old patterns? Will you close it out with action and consistency? Or will you not? Will we repeat the cycle again and again and again? So I hope that this is helpful for you. Remember, really take a deep breath. It's okay to be introspective. You may want to communicate to your business partner, your best friend, your romantic interest, your whoever, your parent. It doesn't matter. Like, hey, I'm finding myself a little bit more introspective this week. If I feel a little less communicative, that's why. If you are a person that cares about a person with anxious attachment, you can always be like, there's nothing going on with you. It's inside of me. If there is something going on with you and that person, to just let them know that, and those are things that like very much Mercury Libras would say and want, which is like, can we talk about this? Can we get on the same page? Is there cooperation here? Can we compromise? And if not, is the scales going in your direction this time, settling, or is it like compromise? And those are real questions that are going to be asked this week, in a lot of ways, astrologically, as well as above, so below in us. Okay. So if you want to really understand a lot of these aspects, I strongly encourage you to book a reading with me. You can just get a transit reading. If you're interested in learning about astrology and consciousness and how to work with planetary attunements, and work with divination to help you refine and go deeper within yourself, as well as trauma-informed yoga and embodiment practices, I strongly encourage you to check out my new program, AWAKEN. It is starting actually tonight, but it's an open enrollment, so you can start anytime. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. And I know it's a little on the longer point, but I haven't done an astrological session for about a month, and I've been really craving getting back here and into this routine. So again, thank you guys so much. And I will see you guys for our astrology check back in next week when we've got that full moon in Aries, which is going to be intense as always. All right, until then, see ya. Bye.